The smell of cinnamon and betrayal hung thick in the air as I stared at the slice of apple pie on my plate. My mother-in-law, Martha, beamed at me from across the dining table, her eyes twinkling with what I now recognized as malice. "Go on, Anna, dear. I made it especially for you," Martha cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I forced a smile, my stomach churning. "It looks delicious, Martha. But you know I'm allergic to cinnamon, right?" Martha's expression flickered for a moment before settling back into a mask of innocence. "Oh, silly me, I must have forgotten. How careless of me." My husband, Sam, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mom, you've known about Anna's allergy for years. How could you forget?" I watched as Martha's facade cracked slightly. She waved her hand dismissively. "At my age, dear, these things slip the mind. Now who wants coffee?" As Martha bustled off to the kitchen, I exchanged a glance with Sam. He looked apologetic, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. This wasn't the first time his mother had forgotten about my dietary restrictions, and I was beginning to suspect it wasn't accidental at all. "I'm sorry, honey," Sam whispered, reaching for my hand. "I'll talk to her again." I squeezed his fingers, appreciating his support, but knowing it wouldn't change anything. "It's okay. I'm used to it by now." Just then, Sam's father, David, and his brother Kyle entered the dining room, their booming voices filling the space. "Well, well, if it isn't the happy couple," Kyle smirked, clapping Sam on the back. "Still letting the little woman dictate your diet, bro?" I bristled at his words, but before I could respond, David chimed in. Now, Kyle, if Sam wants to live on rabbit food, that's his business, though I don't know how he stays standing without a good steak in him." Their laughter grated on my nerves, and I could feel my cheeks burning. Sam shifted uncomfortably beside me, torn between defending me and not rocking the boat with his family. Martha returned with a tray of coffee cups, her smile back in place. "Here we are. Anna, dear, I made yours decaf. I know how sensitive you are to caffeine." I bit my tongue, knowing full well that I had never mentioned any sensitivity to caffeine. In fact, I relied on my morning cup of joe to get through the day. But arguing would only make things worse. "Thank you, Martha," I said, taking the cup with a tight smile. As the conversation flowed around me, I found myself retreating into my thoughts. How had it come to this? When Sam and I first married, I had been so excited to become part of his family. But over the years, Martha's subtle jabs and forgetfulness had worn me down. David and Kyle's dismissive attitudes didn't help either. I was jolted from my reverie by Kyle's loud voice. "So, Anna, when are you two going to give Mom some grandkids? The biological clock's ticking, you know." The room fell silent, and I felt all eyes on me. Sam tensed beside me, knowing how sensitive this topic was. We had been trying for a baby for months with no success, and the pressure from his family was becoming unbearable. I plastered on a smile, determined not to let them see how much their words hurt. "We're just enjoying being married for now, Kyle, but thanks for your concern." Martha clucked her tongue. "Oh, but darling, you don't want to wait too long. At your age, it only gets harder." Something inside me snapped. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me, I need some air." As I rushed out of the dining room, I could hear Sam making excuses for me. But I didn't care. I needed to escape, to breathe, to figure out how I was going to survive this family without losing myself in the process. Standing on the porch, I took deep breaths of the cool evening air. I knew I had a choice to make. I could continue to endure Martha's subtle cruelty and the family's dismissive attitude, or I could take a stand. But how? And at what cost to my marriage? As I heard footsteps approaching from inside, I steeled myself. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. Things couldn't go on like this. Something had to change, and soon. The drive home from Martha's house was tense, the silence between Sam and me as thick as the fog rolling in outside. I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us, threatening to suffocate what was left of our peace. "I'm sorry about tonight," Sam finally said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They can be difficult." I let out a humorless laugh. "Difficult? Sam, your mother tried to poison me with cinnamon. Again." He winced. I know, but she's just set in her ways. She doesn't mean any harm." "Doesn't she?" I turned to face him, feeling the frustration bubbling up inside me. "Because it feels pretty intentional from where I'm sitting." Sam sighed, running a hand through his hair. What do you want me to do, Anna? They're my family. And what am I? The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't take them back now. The rest of the ride passed in silence, the tension between us growing with each mile. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I felt like I was going to explode. As soon as we were inside, I headed straight for the bedroom, needing some space to breathe. But Sam followed, his face a mask of concern and guilt. Anna, please, talk to me, he pleaded. I whirled around, the dam finally breaking. What's there to talk about, Sam? Your mother hates me. Your father and brother treat me like I'm invisible. And you just stand there and let it happen. Sam's face fell. That's not fair. You know how much I love you. Do I? I challenged, my voice cracking. Because sometimes it feels like you love keeping the peace more than you love me. The hurt in Sam's eyes was palpable, but I couldn't stop now. All the pain and frustration of the past few years came pouring out. Every time we visit, it's the same thing. Martha forgets about my allergies. David and Kyle make snide comments about my career, my choices, even my body. And you just smile and nod and pretend everything's fine. Sam reached for me, but I stepped back. Anna, please, I'm trying. I don't know how to make everyone happy. Maybe that's the problem, I said softly. You can't make everyone happy, Sam. At some point you have to choose. The silence that followed was deafening. Sam looked lost, torn between his love for me and his loyalty to his family. And in that moment, I realized just how deep this problem ran. I started, my voice barely above a whisper. I think I need some time alone. Sam's eyes widened in panic. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days. I need to clear my head, figure out what I want. Anna, no, Sam pleaded, reaching for me again. This time, I let him take my hands. We can work this out. I'll talk to them, I promise. Things will be different. I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, but also the fear. I hope so, Sam. I really do. But I can't keep living like this. Something has to change. As I packed a small bag, Sam hovered nearby, looking lost and helpless. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay. But the truth was, I didn't know if it would be. Standing at the front door, bag in hand, I turned to face my husband one last time. I love you, Sam. But I need to love myself, too. With those words hanging in the air, I stepped out into the night, leaving behind a stunned Sam and an uncertain future. As I drove away, tears streaming down my face, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of the end, or the start of something new? The road ahead was dark and foggy, much like my thoughts. But one thing was clear. I couldn't go back to the way things were. It was time for a change, no matter how scary that might be. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it in the dark, my sister's guest room slowly coming into focus. Sam's name flashed on the screen. Anna, you need to come home. His voice was tight with worry. It's my mother. She's here and well, you need to see this. My heart raced as I threw on clothes and rushed out the door. What could Martha possibly be up to now? As I pulled into our driveway, I saw Martha's car parked haphazardly on the lawn. The front door was wide open, and I could hear raised voices from inside. I stepped into chaos. Martha was in our living room, surrounded by grocery bags and cooking utensils. The air was thick with the smell of cinnamon and something burning. Anna, darling, Martha exclaimed, her eyes wild. I'm making you a feast, all your favorites. Sam stood nearby, looking helpless. Mom, please. Anna doesn't eat these things. You know that. Martha waved him off. Nonsense. I'm going to prove to Anna how much I care. No more misunderstandings. I approached cautiously. Martha, what's going on? She turned to me, flour smeared across her cheek. I'm fixing everything, dear. Sam told me how upset you were. I'm going to make it all better with food. My eyes met Sam's over Martha's shoulder. He mouthed, I'm sorry, looking utterly lost. Just then, David and Kyle burst through the open door. Mom, Kyle shouted. What the hell are you doing? David's face was red with anger. Martha, you're embarrassing yourself. Let's go home. Martha's eyes filled with tears. No, I have to make things right. Anna needs to see how much I love her. I felt a twinge of pity, mixed with frustration. This woman had made my life miserable for years, and now she was having a breakdown in my living room. Martha, I said gently, I appreciate the gesture, but this isn't necessary. We need to talk, not whatever this is. She turned to me, desperation in her eyes. But I have to prove it to you. I'm not a monster, Anna. I just wanted to protect my family. Protect them from what? I asked, genuinely curious. Martha's shoulders sagged. From change. From losing them. When Sam married you, I was so afraid he'd forget about us. I thought if I could make you uncomfortable, you'd leave and everything would go back to normal. The room fell silent. Sam looked shocked, David uncomfortable, and Kyle... Was that guilt on his face? I took a deep breath. Martha, your actions hurt me deeply, but this isn't the way to fix things. Suddenly, smoke began billowing from the kitchen. The pie, Martha shrieked, rushing to salvage her creation. As Sam and Kyle dealt with the small fire, I found myself face-to-face with David. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. Anna, he said gruffly, I'm sorry, we've been unfair to you. I nodded, not quite ready to forgive, but appreciating the effort. It's a start, David. As the chaos settled, we all stood in the wreckage of Martha's misguided attempt at reconciliation. The air was thick with smoke, tension, and the possibility of change. Martha emerged from the kitchen, holding a blackened pie. I've ruined everything, she whispered. I looked at this broken woman, then at Sam, who seemed torn between his wife and his family. In that moment, I realized that the path forward wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. No, Martha, I said, surprising myself. You haven't ruined everything, but we have a lot of work to do. As I met Sam's gaze, I saw a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way through this mess. But one thing was certain. Things would never be the same again. The weeks following Martha's kitchen meltdown were a strange dance of tentative peace and simmering tension. Sam and I had moved back in together, but the air between us was thick with unspoken words and lingering doubts. Martha, for her part, had been uncharacteristically quiet, her usual barbs replaced by an awkward silence that was almost worse. It was during one of our now mandatory Sunday dinners at Martha and David's that everything changed. As we sat around the dining table, the clinking of silverware the only sound breaking the uncomfortable silence, Martha suddenly stood up. I've made a special dessert, she announced, her voice trembling slightly. Anna, this one's just for you. My stomach clenched as she disappeared into the kitchen. Sam squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. When Martha returned, she was carrying a beautifully decorated cake. It's cinnamon-free, she said, placing it in front of me. And I hope you'll like it. I stared at the cake, then at Martha's hopeful face. This was the moment of truth. Taking a deep breath, I cut a small slice and took a bite. The flavor exploded on my tongue, rich, sweet, and utterly delicious. But more than that, it was the first time in years that Martha had made something specifically catering to my needs. It's amazing, I said, surprised by the emotion in my voice. Martha's face lit up, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the woman Sam had always insisted his mother could be. But then Kyle snorted, breaking the spell. So what? Now we're all supposed to bend over backwards for Anna's precious diet, he sneered. David cleared his throat uncomfortably. Now, Kyle. But Kyle was on a roll. No, I'm sick of this. Ever since she came into our lives, it's been nothing but drama. Sam used to be fun before he married her. Now look at him. He's whipped. Sam stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's enough, Kyle. I watched in shock as the two brothers faced off, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. Martha wrung her hands helplessly, while David looked torn between intervening and letting it play out. You don't get it, do you? Kyle spat. She's tearing this family apart. Something inside me snapped. I stood up, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. No, Kyle. Your family was broken long before I came along. I just refused to play by your dysfunctional rules. The room fell silent. Kyle gaped at me, unused to being challenged. Sam looked at me with a mixture of pride and concern, but it was Martha's reaction that surprised me most. She's right, Martha said softly. I've been so wrong about everything. David shifted uncomfortably. Martha, don't be ridiculous. We've always... No, David. Martha cut him off, her voice growing stronger. We haven't. We've been cruel and selfish, and it stops now. As the weight of Martha's words sank in, I felt a shift in the air. It was as if a long-held breath had finally been released. But with that release came a new tension, the uncertainty of what came next. I looked at Sam, seeing the conflict in his eyes. He was caught between his love for me and his ingrained loyalty to his family. In that moment, I knew we were at a crossroads. I think, I said slowly, my heart pounding, that we all need to decide what kind of family we want to be, because this can't continue. The silence that followed was deafening. Martha nodded, tears in her eyes. David looked lost while Kyle fumed silently. And Sam reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. As we stood there, surrounded by the remnants of a disastrous dinner and years of pent-up emotions, I realized that whatever happened next would change everything. The question was, were we all ready for that change? Looking around at the faces of my in-laws, some hostile, some remorseful, all uncertain, I knew that the real battle was just beginning, and I was ready to fight. The tension from that disastrous dinner lingered like a storm cloud over our lives. Sam and I tiptoed around each other, the weight of unspoken words growing heavier by the day. It was during one sleepless night that I finally broke. "Sam," I whispered into the darkness, "we need to talk about your family." He sighed, rolling over to face me. "I know, I don't know how to fix this, Anna." "Maybe it's not about fixing," I said, sitting up. "Maybe it's about facing the truth." And so, in the quiet of our bedroom, I laid it all out. Every slight, every accidental allergen, every dismissive comment. As I spoke, I watched Sam's face crumple, the reality of his family's behavior finally sinking in. I knew some of it, he admitted, his voice breaking, but I didn't want to believe it was intentional. "God, Anna, I'm so sorry." His admission was both a relief and a fresh wound. "Why didn't you say anything?" Sam ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. "They're my family, I thought if I just tried harder, if we gave them time, they'd come around." "And now?" I asked, my heart pounding. He met my gaze, determination replacing the uncertainty in his eyes. "Now, we fight back. Together." The next morning, we formulated a plan. We would confront his family one last time, lay everything on the table, and demand change. It was risky, but it felt like our only option. As we pulled up to Martha and David's house that evening, my stomach was in knots. Sam squeezed my hand reassuringly before we stepped out of the car. Martha greeted us at the door, her smile faltering at our serious expressions. "Is everything all right?" "We need to talk," Sam said firmly. "All of us." David and Kyle were already in the living room, eyebrows raised at our unexpected visit. As we all sat down, the air thick with tension, I took a deep breath and began. "For years," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I've endured subtle cruelty and dismissal from this family. It stops now." Kyle scoffed, but Sam silenced him with a glare. "She's right. Mom, Dad, Kyle, the way you've treated Anna is unacceptable." Martha's face paled. "But we've been trying." "No," I cut in, years of frustration finally boiling over. "Trying would be respecting my allergies, not using them against me. Trying would be treating me like family, not an intruder." David shifted uncomfortably. "Now, see here." But Sam wasn't finished. "I've let this go on too long. I love you all, but I love Anna too. And if you can't accept her, truly accept her, then—" He trailed off, the unspoken ultimatum hanging in the air. Kyle jumped to his feet, face red with anger. "So that's it? You're choosing her over your own blood?" "I'm choosing respect and kindness," Sam shot back. "Something you all seem to have forgotten." As the argument escalated, with accusations flying and old wounds reopening, I watched Martha. She sat silently, her eyes darting between her sons, her husband, and me. Suddenly, she stood up. "Enough," she cried, her voice cracking. I've been horrible, to all of you." The room fell silent as Martha continued, tears streaming down her face. "I was so afraid of losing my family that I pushed everyone away. Anna, I'm truly sorry." Her words hung in the air, a fragile offering of peace. But as I looked around at the stunned faces of Sam's family, I realized this was just the beginning. The real test would be what came next. "I appreciate that, Martha," I said carefully. "But apologies aren't enough. We need real change." Sam nodded, standing beside me. "We're giving you all one last chance, but if things don't improve, if we can't find a way to be a real family, we're done." The silence that followed was deafening. David looked shell-shocked. Kyle fumed silently, and Martha looked both terrified and hopeful. As we left that night, the future uncertain but full of possibility, I knew we had just taken the first step on a difficult journey. The question now was, would Sam's family join us, Or would we be forced to walk away for good? New Year's Day arrived with a mixture of hope and trepidation. As Sam and I pulled up to his parents' house, I couldn't shake the feeling that this visit would be different from all the others. "Ready?" Sam asked, squeezing my hand. I nodded, steeling myself, as I'll ever be. The moment we stepped inside, I knew something had changed. The air wasn't thick with tension as usual. Instead, there was an almost palpable sense of effort. Martha greeted us with a tentative smile. "Happy New Year, dears. Come in, come in." As we entered the dining room, my jaw dropped. The table was laden with an extravagant feast, but what caught my eye were the carefully labeled dishes. Cinnamon-free, allergen-safe, Anna's favorite. I turned to Martha, speechless. She wrung her hands nervously. I hope I got it right this time." Sam's eyes were wide with surprise. "Mom, this is incredible." Even David and Kyle seemed subdued, watching the scene unfold with a mix of curiosity and discomfort. As we sat down to eat, the conversation was stilted but civil. Martha kept glancing at me as if seeking approval. I found myself actually enjoying the food, savoring flavors I'd been denied for years in this house. Midway through the meal, Sam cleared his throat. "Actually, we have a surprise for you, Mom." Martha looked up, startled. "For me?" Sam nodded, and I reached into my bag, pulling out a small wrapped package. "Happy birthday, Martha." The room fell silent. Martha stared at the gift, then at us, her eyes filling with tears. "But my birthday was last week. How did you—" "We remembered," I said softly. "We've always remembered." Martha's hands shook as she unwrapped the gift, a beautiful photo album filled with family pictures, including several of her with Sam and me that she'd never seen before. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Sam leaned forward. "Mom, we want to be a family, a real family, but that means acknowledging and celebrating everyone, including you." David shifted uncomfortably. "Martha, dear, I didn't realize we'd forgotten your birthday." Kyle, for once, looked ashamed. "Yeah, Mom, I'm sorry." As Martha flipped through the album, her tears falling freely now, I felt a shift in the room. It was as if a long frozen ice was finally beginning to thaw. But then Kyle, perhaps uncomfortable with the emotional atmosphere, reverted to his old ways. "Well, isn't this touching?" he sneered. "Saint Anna saves the day again." "Kyle," David warned, but the damage was done. Martha's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with an anger I'd never seen before. "That's enough, Kyle! Can't you see what your brother and Anna are trying to do? They're offering us a chance to be better, to be the family we should have been all along." Kyle stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "Oh, so now you're on their side? What happened to family loyalty?" "This is family loyalty," Martha shot back. "True loyalty means holding each other accountable, not enabling bad behavior." As Kyle stormed out, slamming the front door behind him, the room fell into a stunned silence. Martha looked shell-shocked, as if she couldn't believe her own words. David cleared his throat. "Martha, I think we need to talk about a lot of things." Sam and I exchanged glances, realizing we were witnessing a seismic shift in family dynamics. But as hopeful as this moment was, I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. Martha turned to us, her eyes brimming with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Anna, Sam, thank you for not giving up on us. On me." As I looked at this woman, this flawed, complex woman who had caused me so much pain but was now trying so hard to change, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The question was, could we all take that final terrifying leap towards real change? The answer, I knew, would determine not just the future of our family, but the very core of who we all were. And as I met Sam's gaze across the table, I silently prayed we were ready for whatever came next. The days following the New Year's dinner were a whirlwind of emotions and tentative steps towards reconciliation. Martha had been calling more frequently, her voice tinged with a newfound warmth that both comforted and unsettled me. It was during one of these calls that she invited Sam and me over for coffee, insisting she needed to talk to us about something important. As we pulled up to the house, my heart raced. Sam squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Whatever happens, we're in this together," he said. Martha greeted us at the door, her smile nervous but genuine. As we settled in the living room, I noticed the photo album we'd given her prominently displayed on the coffee table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Martha began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "About my behavior, about our family, about everything." I held my breath, sensing we were on the cusp of something monumental. "Anna," Martha turned to me, her eyes brimming with tears, "I owe you the biggest apology. My actions were inexcusable. I was so afraid of losing my son that I nearly drove him away entirely." The words I'd longed to hear for years hung in the air between us. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt a complex mix of emotions washing over me. "Martha," I started, my voice surprisingly steady, "I appreciate your apology. But I need to know, why? Why did you treat me that way for so long?" Martha's face crumpled. I was jealous and scared. When Sam married you, I felt like I was being replaced. I thought if I could make you uncomfortable enough, you'd leave and everything would go back to how it was." Her admission hit me like a physical blow. Years of pain, of feeling unwelcome and unloved, all because of one woman's insecurity. Sam leaned forward, his voice tight with emotion. "Mom, how could you think that? Anna was never a threat to you." "I know that now," Martha whispered. "But back then, I let my fears control me. I became someone I didn't recognize." As Martha's tears fell freely, I felt my own eyes welling up. The weight of years of resentment pressed down on me, threatening to suffocate us all. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Kyle stormed in, his face red with anger. "What's going on here? Another family meeting without me?" David appeared behind him, looking flustered. "Kyle, please, we were just what?" Kyle spat. "Letting Anna take over the family? Turning Mom against us?" The tension in the room skyrocketed. Sam stood up, positioning himself between Kyle and me. "That's enough, Kyle. This isn't about taking sides, it's about fixing what's broken." Kyle laughed bitterly. "Broken? The only thing broken here is your loyalty to your real family." Martha rose shakily to her feet. "Kyle, stop this. Anna is family. I've been wrong for so long, and it's time we all faced the truth." As Kyle's face contorted with rage, I saw years of family dynamics playing out before me. The favored son, the peacemaking mother, the distant father, all roles that had contributed to this toxic environment. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Standing up, I faced Kyle directly. "I'm not here to take anyone's place. I'm here because I love Sam, and I want us all to be a real family. But that can't happen until we address the real issues." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "What issues?" "The way you treat your mother, for one," I said, my voice gaining strength. "The way this family has ignored her needs, her birthday, her very existence as anything other than a caretaker." Martha gasped softly behind me, and I could feel Sam's supportive presence at my side. "Who do you think you are?" Kyle snarled, taking a step towards me. But I stood my ground. "I'm your sister-in-law. I'm Sam's wife, and I'm done being the scapegoat for this family's problems." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. David looked lost, Kyle fumed, and Martha looked at me with a mixture of awe and gratitude that nearly broke my heart. As we stood there, on the precipice of either total destruction or true healing, I realized that everything, our future, our family, our very sense of self, hung in the balance. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of our relationships, but the course of all our lives, and I was ready for whatever came next. The weeks following our confrontation were a whirlwind of change. Martha, to everyone's surprise, was the catalyst. One sunny morning, she called us all together for a family meeting. "I've made a decision," she announced, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm moving out. I need to find myself, away from all of this." The room erupted in chaos. David sputtered in disbelief. Kyle raged about family loyalty, but Sam looked at his mother with a mixture of pride and understanding that brought tears to my eyes. As the dust settled, Martha turned to me. "Anna, I owe you so much. You showed me what real strength looks like." In that moment, years of resentment melted away. I hugged her, both of us crying, years of pain and misunderstanding finally healing. Martha's decision sent shockwaves through the family. David, lost without his wife to manage every aspect of his life, floundered. Kyle, suddenly without his mother's constant support, faced the harsh reality of his own shortcomings. Months passed, and we watched in awe as Martha blossomed. She rented a small apartment, took art classes, even started dating. The woman who had once been my nemesis was now a source of inspiration. "I never knew life could be this full," Martha confided during one of our now regular coffee dates. "I spent so many years trying to control everything, I forgot to actually live." Meanwhile, David and Kyle struggled. Without Martha's financial management, they faced a series of setbacks. Kyle lost his job, unable to function without constant coddling. David, forced to fend for himself, realized how much he'd taken Martha for granted. It was during a particularly difficult family dinner that everything came to a head. Kyle, drunk and belligerent, lashed out at Martha. "You abandoned us," he shouted. "Some mother you are." I watched, heart pounding, as Martha straightened her spine. "No, Kyle, I didn't abandon you. I saved myself, and it's time you grew up and did the same." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to everyone's shock, David spoke up. "She's right, son," he said softly. "We've all been living in a fantasy. It's time we faced reality." As Kyle stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt a shift in the air. It was as if the last piece of a long unsolved puzzle had finally fallen into place. In the months that followed, our family underwent a transformation. David, humbled by his struggles, began to appreciate Martha in ways he never had before. They started dating again, rediscovering each other as equals. Kyle, after hitting rock bottom, finally sought help for his dependency issues. And Sam and I? We found ourselves in a new role, the stable center of a family learning to love and respect each other. It was on a warm summer evening, as we all gathered in Martha's new backyard for a barbecue, that I fully realized how far we'd come. Martha, radiant in her newfound confidence, was laughing with Sam as they grilled. David was actually helping, a novelty that still surprised us all. Even Kyle, sober and subdued, was making an effort to engage positively. As I watched them, a wave of emotion washed over me. The journey had been long and painful, but the destination, it was more beautiful than I could have imagined. Sam came over, wrapping an arm around me. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my tears. I nodded, leaning into him, just thinking about how far we've come, how different things could have been if we'd given up. He kissed my forehead. "You never gave up on any of us, even when we didn't deserve it." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over our imperfect but healing family, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known before. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Real families never are, but we had the tools and the love to face whatever came our way. Martha caught my eye across the yard and raised her glass in a silent toast. I raised mine in return, acknowledging the journey we'd shared. From bitter enemies to unlikely allies, we'd forged a bond stronger than I'd ever thought possible. As night fell and laughter filled the air, I realized that this messy, complicated, beautiful family was everything I'd ever wanted. And it had been worth every moment of struggle to get here. In the end, it wasn't about winning or losing, about right or wrong. It was about growth, forgiveness, and the courage to change. And as I looked around at the faces of my family, my real family, I knew that we had all, in our own ways, found the strength to do just that.
My son's fiancé mocked me when we met for the first time. "Your dad only finished middle school. Seriously, can you even get a job with such low qualifications?" She laughed heartily. Her father joined in. "I can't believe he's an unemployed high school dropout." They belittled me, and to make things worse, they served food only for themselves, excluding me. The fiancé's mother said with a big smile, "I prepare meals only for my family." I've never seen someone treated so badly during a meeting between two families. I decided to get back at the 5 rude people, including my son, and told them to say whatever they wanted before storming out of the restaurant. My name is Eric Roberts. I just turned 59 this year, and I have a 24-year-old son named Larry. But my relationship with my son is strained, and he never comes to my house. I've often regretted how I raised him, as this led to the situation we're in now. I lost my beloved wife when Larry was still in elementary school. My wife had been frail since childhood, and she passed away at the young age of 47. At my wife's funeral, I didn't care about the judgmental looks from relatives. I sobbed like a little kid. Larry was more composed, telling me, "Dad, it's sad, but let's say our goodbyes to Mom." But my grief only lasted during the funeral. Back then, I was running a real estate business I had inherited from my father. The day after my wife's funeral, I woke up to phone calls from clients. That's right, I had loyal clients to take care of, and I had to raise Larry on my own. Those phone calls snapped me out of my grief, and I headed to my office. At the same time, I took part in school events and PT meetings, filling the role my wife had played all by myself. There's no way my clumsy self could juggle work and school events perfectly on my own. I quickly gave up and decided to temporarily close my business. I handed over my clients to another real estate agency so I could spend time with Larry. But when I went to his school, Larry glared at me and said, "Dad, I told you not to come." He even complained, "Don't tell anyone near my dad." Without saying whose parent I was or why I was at the school, I would just be some stranger. Even today, I'm wearing a name tag that says Roberts as I participate in PTA activities. I couldn't understand why my son suddenly started giving me the cold shoulder, but it didn't take long for the truth to come out. "Hey, isn't that your dad? What's he doing at school on a weekday? Does he have nothing better to do?" One classmate said, "My mom said that after your mom passed away, your dad became jobless, right?" Larry remained silent and looked down as his classmates taunted him. I quickly rushed over and told them, "I'm just taking some time off work. It's like your summer or winter break." But this only made things worse for Larry. "Your dad's just pretending to be on break. Your family's poor. I'll share my bread from lunch with you," one kid said. Larry grew more and more resentful, and his classmates kept making fun of him. Despite knowing my son was being ridiculed, all I could do was look the other way. I can't remember how many times I cried alone because of how pathetic I felt. Soon, when Larry entered middle school, he started hanging out with delinquents. He would sleep over at friends' houses and hang out at gas station parking lots until late at night. Back in the day, cell phones weren't very common, and it was rare for a middle schooler to have one. Larry started coming home less and less, and I had no clue where he was or what he was doing. All I could do was apologize when I got calls from the school saying there had been a complaint from a nearby gas station. Whenever I went to Larry's school, Larry and his rowdy classmates would call me names like "good for nothing" and "bottom of the barrel" while throwing empty cans at me. Larry had become more violent since entering middle school, and I was scared to even talk to him, not knowing what he might do. I wish I had handled things better when he was still in elementary school. But what was the right way for a parent to deal with a child's bad behavior? I had no idea how to communicate with a teenager and was utterly confused. He skipped school without caring and even ran away during classes. His grades were rock bottom. At a parent-teacher conference, they told me about a private high school where even Larry could get in, and I was relieved. I was glad there was a high school he could go to. I thought maybe he'd calm down a bit after going to high school. Just as I hoped, after starting high school, Larry began to take his classes seriously. He studied hard, started scoring a bit above average on tests, and even made it to college. But his disdain for me remained the same. Even after going to high school, he continued to bounce from one friend's house to another, never stopping by home. After getting into college, he started living alone in a dorm and paid his tuition by working part-time. He was living independently, which was commendable, but he was cold as ice towards me. Even after he started working, he never once came home. Then out of the blue, when Larry was about 24, he called me. He said, "I got someone I want to marry." Then he goes, "Next Sunday at 3:00 p.m., we're meeting up at a fancy restaurant, so be there," and lets me know the plans he made without even asking about my availability. I was like, hold on, this is too sudden. But when I got mad, he just said, "If you can't make it, don't bother," and hung up the phone with his cold attitude. I had mixed feelings, but he's my only son, so for his sake, I went to the fancy restaurant at the time he told me to. When I got to the restaurant, her folks were already there, and they were like, "Who are you?" All rude. I was like, "You call me out of the blue and then ask who I am." Come on, but even though I was fuming, her folks just said, "No, we didn't call you." And they were just as cold as my son. Now my son Larry was standing there smirking. This guy was up to something. Still not sure I trusted what was happening, I headed inside the restaurant. There was no talk about Larry or his partner Kelly. Instead, I was the center of their attention, and they treated me like an intruder. Then Larry started saying, "This guy here dropped out of high school and worked, but after Mom passed, he's just been loafing around, telling Kelly and her folks." I was like, "Kay, this isn't the time or place." But he didn't care. Then to top it all off, Kelly burst out laughing, saying, "For real? Can a person even get hired with just a middle school education?" Kelly's dad added, "Wow, raised by a high school dropout and layabout. But you're here with a college degree and a job at a big company. You took your old man as what not to be, huh?" Praising Larry. I was too tired to argue and was about to say what you want, I'm out of here. But then a waiter came in from behind me with the food. "Sorry for the wait," he said. Oh right, the food hadn't even come yet. I was so upset I forgot. I tried to calm down, thought I'd just eat what was in front of me and leave. But the food that got brought out was only for Larry, Kelly, and Kelly's parents. The waiter said, "I'm sorry, we had a reservation for 5, giving me this look." Kelly's mom said, "Yes, that's correct. He's not our family, so don't mind him," giving the waiter a sweet smile. The waiter looked all kinds of uncomfortable and backed out. Just as I was about to lose it, Kelly's dad cut me off. He said, "We don't want anything to do with some deadbeat high school dropout. Our family and relatives are all bank employees, doctors, working at major companies. You don't belong here. Please leave." That was enough. I said, "Is education and job history all you care about? Aren't you folks a bit off your rockers?" And got up to leave. To that, Kelly's dad said, "I work at Bank of New York Mellon, where education and job history really matter for clients' trust. But of course, a layabout like you wouldn't know." I said, "Oh my, you work at Bank of New York Mellon, huh? That's quite impressive," and walked out. I said that as I was leaving, but they didn't hear me. The next day, I paid a visit to Bank of New York Mellon, where Kelly's dad works. Being called a deadbeat by my son, his classmates, and my son's fiancée and her family, I must admit I'm not actually a deadbeat. After my wife passed away, I temporarily closed my real estate business. Let me clarify, it was just a temporary closure. I didn't shut it down for good. After my wife's passing, I switched my business to online management so I could prioritize my son's school events and PTA meetings. When I had a physical store, most of my clients were neighbors. But after switching to online management, I could serve customers from all over the country, like people living in small towns about an hour's drive from the nearest train station, and even Americans living abroad. I started getting more consultations about renting and buying properties from these folks. Thanks to the internet, I could expand my property portfolio and cater to a broader clientele. Running a real estate business online made things possible that seemed like a dream. Additionally, I was quite active in stocks and investments as a hobby. Currently, I have $70 million deposited in Bank of New York Mellon, where Kelly's dad works. Upon arriving at the bank, I promptly requested to speak with the branch manager and informed him about everything that happened the day before. I said, "I was told by one of your employees that this bank operates on trust built on educational background and work history. So I've lost all trust in this bank because of that statement. Could you please proceed with the account closure? The branch manager kept apologizing profusely and finally explained the account closure process with a face on the verge of tears. Oh, I almost forgot about something important. There's this troublemaker who has not paid the rent for the apartment I own for 3 years. I had been letting it slide, thinking he's my son, but no more. I mailed my son a notice demanding 3 years' worth of rent. 5 days later, Kelly's dad and my bonehead son came storming into my house. "Why did you rat me out to the branch manager?" "That was underhanded, Dad." "What's the deal with that notice?" "If you're the manager, cover for me." I sighed and said, "I lost trust in the bank after learning about your practice of judging clients based on education and work history. Are you panicking just because of what one person said? Do you have something to hide? And Larry, just because we're family doesn't mean you can skip paying rent. Pay your own rent," Kelly's dad shouted. "Because you went around stirring the pot, I got a bunch of complaints from my other clients. My boss chewed me out because of what you did. The nerve." "Oh no, I didn't stir the pot. I just shared this story as casual conversation with my relatives and clients. I didn't tell them to close their accounts," I said with a smile. My son snapped at me. "What clients, Dad? You're just a deadbeat, aren't you? Do you think a deadbeat could afford to build a huge house like this in such a prime location and still maintain this lifestyle?" "I even did some renovations recently," I replied. My son looked baffled and said, "Huh. What's that? Did you go into debt or something? I'm really fed up with you." I took a break from my real estate job for a while and then switched to running an online business, which I'm still doing. "How many times do I have to tell you I'm not a bum?" I said. My son turned pale and said, "What?" I had no clue. "I thought you were just working part-time." Kelly's dad started yelling, "You're a real piece of work, keeping your occupation secret even from your own son." Annoyed, I said, "Say whatever you want," and closed the front door. Outside, I heard them shouting, "You've ruined my reputation. I'm going to sue you. I can't believe I've been duped by my old man for this long. I'm not going to let him do this to me." They were making a ruckus, but after about 5 minutes of shouting, they seemed to get exhausted, and it got quiet. Once they realized that shouting was meaningless, I figured they wouldn't bother coming around here again. I let out a sigh of relief and went to make myself a cup of coffee. Just then, I heard my son's voice outside again. "You big fat liar. What are you still doing here?" I said as I looked out the window to see Kelly's dad and my son spray painting my front door. "You've got to be kidding me. What are they up to now?" Just as I was about to go outside and give them a piece of my mind, I heard a police siren getting closer. Could it be that someone in the neighborhood called the cops? My hunch was right. When I went outside, the 3 of them were being detained by the police who had shown up because of a neighbor's complaint. There he is, that big fat liar. "I lost all my credibility at work because of him," they shouted. The police calmly loaded them into the patrol car, saying, all right, we'll take it from here." Then one of the officers, who seemed to have just noticed me, approached with a strangely cheerful expression. "Sir, would you please come with us to give your statement?" "Why me?" I thought, but I guess I'm the victim here. I'm going to spill the beans on all their shenanigans. When we got to the police station, I showed the cops a video from my phone. It was footage from the security camera I installed at my front door. The camera had recorded all the yelling and antics. "What a great piece of evidence," the officer exclaimed with a sparkle in his eye, and my questioning was over in a jiffy. My son and Kelly's dad were given a stern warning by the police and had to sign a restraining order to keep their distance from me. It turns out the whole neighborhood had witnessed their crazy behavior. One of my son's coworkers, who lives nearby, had been blabbering about it at the office. Hey, you won't believe it, but Larry was caught spray painting his own father's house and got hauled off by the cops. I was so shocked I recorded the whole thing. My son became the talk of the town at his workplace and with clients, and his boss ended up demoting him. I went to report the incident to Bank of New York Mellon again, where Kelly's dad worked. When I showed the manager the security camera footage on my phone, his face turned white as a sheet. I heard that Kelly's dad finally got fired, and naturally, she called off the engagement with Larry. Larry and Kelly's family both fled far away to a rural area. Apparently, Kelly's parents even came to work part-time at the gas station in the sticks run by my brother. They were no good and couldn't get the hang of stocking shelves, no matter how many times they tried. I showed them and had to give them the boot right away. Word spread quickly, and nearby gas stations and farmers did the same. According to my brother, Kelly's parents can't seem to land a steady job and are bouncing from one gig to another at gas stations and farms. Furthermore, I heard that Kelly showered her boyfriends, including my son, with expensive gifts like watches, and she got into debt because of that. The little money her parents make from their part-time jobs apparently goes toward paying off Kelly's debts. It's a mystery how they're making ends meet. It's been 6 years since then, and my son is now 30. It seems like he's changed for the better after being treated with kindness from folks in the small town he moved to. He came to me a couple of times and apologized sincerely. He said, "I was naive and immature. I didn't even try to understand your job and just labeled you as a good-for-nothing. I can't apologize enough for how much I regret it." Seeing the change in my son's attitude, I decided to let him move in with me. Now he's working at a company near my place, and little by little, he's helping me out with my work too. But don't get me wrong, he's still inexperienced, and I don't trust him completely. I'm hesitant to hand over all my work to him, but I'm going to observe his behavior and attitude towards work and make decisions accordingly. If he proves he's really turned his life around, I might consider handing over the rest of my business. But if I told him that, he might get too excited and say, for real. I'll hand in my 1 week's notice tomorrow and do something impulsive. I'm living with my son, holding on to the hope that one day I'll feel confident enough to trust him with everything. After the incident with the police, the news about Larry and Kelly's dad spread quickly. The neighborhood couldn't stop talking about it. One of Larry's coworkers who lives nearby blabbered about it at the office, saying, "Hey, you won't believe it, but Larry was caught spray painting his own father's house and got hauled off by the cops." I was so shocked I recorded the whole thing. Because of this, my son became the talk of the town at his workplace, and his boss ended up demoting him. I went to report the incident to Bank of New York Mellon again, where Kelly's dad worked. When I showed the manager the security camera footage on my phone, his face turned white as a sheet. He was speechless. I heard that Kelly's dad finally got fired, and naturally, she called off the engagement with Larry. Larry and Kelly's family both fled far away to a rural area. Apparently, Kelly's parents even came to work part-time at a gas station run by my brother. They were no good and couldn't get the hang of stocking shelves, no matter how many times they tried. My brother said they were a complete disaster, always messing up and causing trouble. Despite all this, my focus remained on my son. It's been a long road, but I believe he's starting to understand the importance of hard work and responsibility. He's apologized for his past behavior and seems genuinely remorseful. I've told him that actions speak louder than words, and I'm watching to see if his actions match his apologies. Living with him again has been challenging, but it's also been a chance for us to rebuild our relationship. I see glimpses of the man he could become, and it gives me hope. I haven't decided yet whether I'll hand over my business to him, but I'm giving him a chance to prove himself. If he shows he can be responsible and trustworthy, then maybe, just maybe, I'll consider it. But for now, I'm taking it 2 days at a time, hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. My name is Emma, and I'm a 20-year-old university student living in New York. I grew up in a family that went through its share of changes. My parents got divorced when I was 14, and I've lived with my mom ever since. Things got even tougher last year when my dad, who I was very close to, passed away from cancer. He left me a significant amount of money in his will, but I could only access it when I turned 20. This year, I reached that milestone, and not long after, something pretty unbelievable happened. One afternoon, my stepdad Justin, who is in his mid-30s and has been married to my mom for the last 6 years, asked to talk to me. Our relationship has always been a bit strained. I try to keep things peaceful, but he's not always been the kindest to me. He started the conversation with a heavy topic. He suggested that I give the money my dad left me to my stepbrother Michael to help with his college expenses. According to Justin, Michael needed the money more for his education, and it seemed only fair to him that I help out. I was taken aback by his request. The idea of giving away the money my dad left for me felt wrong. I tried to explain to Justin that this inheritance was something my dad intended for me, and it felt important to keep it for my future. But Justin didn't see my point of view. He insisted that I didn't need the money and that Michael's needs were greater. Despite his pressure, I stood my ground. I calmly explained to Justin that saying no wasn't about disrespect. It was about honoring my dad's wishes and maintaining personal boundaries. Justin got quite upset at my refusal and tried to intimidate me, but I remained firm in my decision. It was a challenging conversation, but it was important for me to speak up for what I felt was right. I stood firm, making it clear that if Justin was upset by my refusal, he might want to reconsider his approach. Justin, remember you're part of this household too, so let's try to keep things respectful, I suggested, but it seemed like a peaceful resolution wasn't in the cards. I ended the conversation there, leaving before he had the chance to respond. Justin's reaction wasn't a shock to me, given his past behavior. I had a hunch he might try to claim the inheritance money for himself at some point. You might wonder about my mom's role in all of this. Well, that's a complex issue. My mom, for reasons I can't fully understand, always seems to overlook Justin's negative traits. She's deeply in love with him, almost to the point of blindness, and I didn't want to shatter her perception by constantly clashing with Justin. So I've tried to maintain peace for her sake. It's odd considering I'm one of the youngest in the house, yet often I find myself having to be the most responsible. At the time of this ordeal, my mom Mary was out of town, which is why she wasn't around to intervene. Had she been there, she would have been livid. Justin knew he had a window of opportunity with her away, underestimating my resolve in the process. As I walked away from our heated discussion, Justin followed, berating me and labeling me a terrible sister for not wanting to hand over the inheritance to Michael. But it wasn't about not wanting to help, it was about the principle of the matter. Justin and Michael unfortunately seemed to follow the like father, like son trope, acting more like schemers from a cartoon than family members. Their antics could remind someone of the characters Pinky and the Brain, with their roles in this scenario up for debate. As I tried to leave the argument behind, Justin wasn't done. He insisted I listen and comply with his demands, bringing Michael into the conversation to reinforce his point. Michael sleepily joined in, confused about the details until Justin prompted him about the important reason behind their demand for the money. a supposed business venture that suddenly became about Michael's university tuition. Their story was inconsistent, with Justin scrambling to justify their claim to my inheritance, first mentioning a business, then switching to tuition. It was clear their motives were murky at best, relying on manipulation rather than any real need or right to the money my dad left me. "I just woke up, so I'm a bit foggy," Michael mumbled, trying to piece together his story. "Right, the university. I've been thinking about going, and I need the money for that." "So yeah, I need it." His attempt to claim the inheritance for his education was unconvincing at best. I couldn't help but respond with a firm no, prompting a flurry of protests from both him and Justin. "Why not Emma? He's clear about what he wants," Justin pressed, insisting the matter was non-negotiable and that they were entitled to the money. "We'll just have to see about that," I replied, the air growing thick with tension. Justin's antics were usually limited to harmless pranks, but this new scheme to manipulate me out of my inheritance marked a departure into outright selfishness and immaturity. I decided to hold off on telling my mom for the time being, preferring to handle the situation on my own, especially after uncovering more about their dubious intentions. "Emma, stop being childish. It's time to act like an adult and do what's right," Justin lectured, suggesting that the adult thing to do was to hand over my inheritance. His logic was baffling. "And what you think is the right thing is to give away my inheritance on your say-so," I countered. His plea to keep this from my mom raised my suspicions further. Why shouldn't I tell her? She has every right to know what's happening in her own house. Justin's desperation not to involve my mom, paired with his uncharacteristically stern tone, only fueled my resolve. Something was definitely amiss, particularly with the so-called business venture Michael had mentioned earlier. It was clear they underestimated my awareness of their tactics, and Justin's opposition to me sharing anything with my mom was a red flag. I reached out to my mom at the first opportunity. "Hey Mom, how's everything with you?" I began, trying to gauge her mood. "I'm all right, dear. What about you?" she responded. I hesitated, knowing what I was about to divulge could cause a stir. "Not great, Mom. Something's up with Justin and Michael. Justin in particular. He's been acting really strange." My mom's response was to caution me against overthinking things. "Oh, Emma, don't let your imagination get the better of you." But it was too late for reassurances. The pieces were too aligned, pointing to something more than just a misunderstanding or paranoia on my part. Understanding my mom's reluctance to believe the unsettling truth about Justin, I pressed on, determined to shed light on the situation. "Mom, I get that you have feelings for him, but Justin crossed a line. He didn't just ask for the inheritance money. He demanded it for Michael, claiming it was for education purposes. There's something off about this whole thing, and he even became aggressive when I mentioned bringing it up to you." I explained, my resolve hardened despite her skepticism. My mom hesitated, torn by her emotions and the troubling accusations against the man she cared for. "I'm struggling to grasp this, Emma. I feel like we need more evidence to make sense of it all." "Don't worry, Mom. I'll find the proof we need," I assured her, even though she wasn't entirely convinced. The idea that Justin had somehow bewitched her with his manipulations nagged at me, but I knew I needed solid evidence to reveal the true nature of his intentions. Later that night, I found myself scanning the family computer for any clues that could unravel the mystery of Justin's behavior. Fortune seemed to be on my side when I discovered that Justin had carelessly left his email account open. What I found was a revelation. Emails exchanged between Justin and a woman named Martha painted a clear picture of deceit. These messages were far from innocent, hunting strongly at an affair. But it was the content discussing plans for a divorce and a future together, fueled by an influx of money from a dubious business venture, that caught my attention. Justin may have been cautious not to detail any illegal activities, but his indiscretion and betrayal were blatant. Armed with this information and determined to uncover more, I decided to approach Michael, hoping he might inadvertently reveal more about their plans. I initiated a casual conversation with him, slyly turning on my phone's recorder to capture our exchange. "Hey, Michael," I greeted him, fighting to sound cheerful. "Hello, Emma," he replied, seemingly in a good mood. "You seem happy today." "Why not? It's a beautiful day," I said, steering the conversation in hopes of discovering more about Justin's schemes and their impact on my family. I approached Michael with a sense of curiosity, pretending to consider their request for the inheritance money. "I've been thinking a lot about what you and Justin mentioned. I'm actually considering giving you the money for your college," I told him, watching his reaction closely. "Really? That's amazing. I'll let him know right away," Michael said, his excitement palpable. "Hold on, not so quickly. Before anything happens, I need to confirm something. This money is specifically for your college tuition, correct?" I pressed on, trying to gauge his sincerity. "Yes, of course, for my college tuition." Michael stuttered a bit, perhaps caught off guard by my questioning. "And you're sure about this? What about Martha? Is she serious about it too?" I prodded, dropping the name I had discovered in Justin's emails. "Martha? Who's Martha?" Michael faltered, a clear sign of confusion crossing his face. "She's a student advisor at the college," he quickly covered up, but it was too late. Unbeknownst to us, Justin had silently entered the room, and his presence was intimidating. "I don't appreciate you questioning my son like this," he interjected, his tone stern. "I was merely inquiring about the intended use of my inheritance. After all, if I'm considering giving it away, I'd like to know it's for a good reason," I explained, trying to maintain my composure. Justin's retort was sharp. "Once you give money away, it's no longer yours to worry about. It's not your business anymore." The audacity of his statement took me aback, especially considering his next threat. "You're not just thinking about giving us the money. You will give it to us, or you'll find yourself out of this house." Michael looked as shocked as I felt by his father's escalation. "Dad, this isn't what we agreed on," he began, only to be cut off by Justin, asserting his authority in a domineering tone, threatening my place in the home if I didn't comply with his demands. Choosing silence as my response, I retreated to my room, all the while recording the entire confrontation. Justin was unaware that his true colors were being captured for posterity. Once safe in my room, I began compiling all the evidence I had against him. It felt like I was a detective in one of those crime shows, piecing together the puzzle. I had audio recordings and email screenshots, all pointing to Justin's deceitful behavior and his affair with Martha. Feeling the weight of my findings, I decided it was time to bring my mom into the loop. "Hello, Mom," I started, my voice laced with urgency. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you?" She responded, unaware of the storm brewing. "Mom, are you sitting down? I have something important to tell you, and it's not easy," I said, preparing her for the revelations that were to come. Breaking the news to my mom was tough. I started by telling her about the unsettling discoveries I had made. Initially, she found it hard to believe, but when I played the audio recording of my conversation with Justin, her denial began to fade, replaced by a mixture of shock and heartbreak. Why would he do such things? Why be so cruel? She questioned, her voice breaking with every word. It's hard to say, but we're dealing with someone who doesn't have our best interests at heart. I replied gently, trying to be as supportive as I could despite the harsh reality. I hate to say it, but he's not the person we thought he was. Hearing the truth straight from the recording was a turning point for her. This is unacceptable. I can't believe I wasn't here to protect you from them, she said, determination taking over her initial shock. Stay put. I'm coming back immediately. And yes, I locked my door, I reassured her. My mom's protective instincts kicked in full force. She was ready to confront Justin and ensure he regretted his actions. He's going to realize he picked the wrong family to mess with, she said, a fierce resolve in her voice. When she arrived, it was a moment filled with mixed emotions. We hugged tightly, sharing tears over the betrayal and the tough decisions that lay ahead. Yet there was also a sense of relief and unity. Together, we spent hours devising a plan, ready to face the ordeal as a team. In the days that followed, Justin was perplexed by my mom's unexpected return and her cold demeanor towards him. He tried to play it off with a veneer of cheerfulness, likely hoping to charm his way out of any suspicions. But my mom was unmoved. She saw right through his act and was gearing up to take decisive action. Concerned about the true nature of Justin's business and the potential misuse of the inheritance, my mom decided it was time to bring in professional help. She hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Justin's activities and the mysterious emails. The thought of him planning to misuse the money for unethical purposes infuriated her further, and she was adamant about protecting us from his deceit. The private investigator's findings confirmed our worst fears and shed new light on Justin's scheming. My mom briefed me on the details, and together we prepared for the next steps. It was clear that this was more than just a family dispute. It was about standing up against manipulation and ensuring justice was served. In that moment, the atmosphere in the room was charged with tension, a palpable mix of disbelief and resolve hanging between us. Justin's usual confidence seemed to falter under the weight of our accusations, his eyes darting from the camera to my mom, then to me, as if searching for some escape or loophole in our confrontation. You can't possibly understand what you're talking about. This is ridiculous, Justin tried to deflect, but his voice lacked its usual assertiveness. It was clear the tables had turned, and the power he once wielded so effortlessly was slipping through his fingers. Michael, caught in the middle of this familial storm, looked from his father to us, his expression a mix of confusion and realization. Perhaps for the first time, he began to see the man he called father for who he truly was, a revelation that seemed to shake him to his core. My mom, with a steely gaze fixed on Justin, stepped forward. Not only do we understand, but we have proof, emails, recordings. You've been planning to launder money through a laundromat, all the while involving yourself with a known criminal. Martha's record speaks volumes, and your plans for this business are clear as day. Justin's attempts to maintain any semblance of innocence were crumbling fast. You have no idea what you're getting into. This is my business, my life. You can't just barge in. But we can, and we are, I interjected, bolstering my mom's stance. This isn't just about your business, Justin. This is about our lives, our safety. You've brought danger and illegality into our home, and we won't stand by and watch you destroy everything for your selfish gains. The evidence was indisputable. The audio recordings of Justin's and Michael's conversations, the emails outlining their plans, and now their caught in the act admissions made it impossible for Justin to deny any longer. The camera in my hands, still rolling, captured every word, every denial, and every excuse, ensuring there was no way out for him. You think you're clever, recording this, gathering evidence. Justin sneered, his composure cracking further. You may think you've won, but we don't think we've won, Justin. We know we have. My mom cut him off, her voice firm and unwavering. "What you've done is not only morally reprehensible, but illegal. You've endangered this family, exploited my trust, and now you're going to face the consequences of your actions." As the confrontation reached its climax, Michael finally spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, how could you?" It was a question loaded with betrayal and disillusionment, aimed at the man he had looked up to. The room fell silent for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling in. Justin, now devoid of his usual bravado, seemed to shrink before us. It was clear the game was over. My mom's next steps were clear: legal action, separation, and ensuring the safety and security of our family. As we left Justin to contemplate the ruin of his own making, my mom and I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with the truth on our side and the evidence in hand, we were ready to face whatever came next together. The veil had indeed been lifted, and in its place, a newfound strength and unity emerged between us, ready to rebuild and move forward from the shadows of deceit. "I'm clueless about what you're hinting at. Why don't we call Martha? Maybe she can shed some light on this, huh?" Justin tried to deflect with a tone that barely masked his panic. "You two think you've got it all figured out. Martha is just a friend," he added, but the confidence he attempted to project was waning rapidly. "The compromising pictures we found tell a different story," I countered, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions inside me. "And seriously, who uses email for affairs these days? It's absurdly reckless." Justin, now visibly flustered, shot back, "You went through my personal stuff. That's outrageous." "No, Justin, what's outrageous is you," my mom interjected, her voice rising in indignation. "How dare you repeatedly threaten my daughter over money that rightfully belongs to her? How dare you use threats to attempt to evict her from her own home? Your actions are indefensible. How dare you involve your son in your reckless plans, putting him at risk? And your audacity to plan using that money for illegal ventures is beyond forgiveness. Now, when it's time to account for your actions, you suddenly fall silent." She continued, her words cutting through the air like a blade. Justin, cornered and desperate, spat out, "Get that camera out of my face," as he lunged towards me in a blind rage. I dodged his attempt swiftly, his aggressive move only adding to the gravity of his unraveling. "You're thinking of attacking my daughter now. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in?" my mom exclaimed, her tone a mix of disbelief and anger. Justin, defiant to the end, sneered, "You think you understand the situation. You know nothing. Well, let's see if the police agree with you. They should be arriving any minute now," I declared, watching closely for his reaction. "Police? You wouldn't dare," he blustered, but his bravado was crumbling as the sound of police sirens grew closer. Justin's usual smugness disappeared, replaced by a look of sheer terror. It was the first time I'd seen him stripped of his arrogance, revealing the coward beneath. "Please, Mary, let's not escalate this." "I can explain," he pleaded, his voice cracking under the strain. "Save your explanations for the judge, you despicable man," my mom retorted with a disgust that left no room for ambiguity. "And Michael, don't think you're absolved from responsibility. You're both going to face the consequences of your actions." As the police arrived, it was clear that this was the beginning of the end for Justin's schemes. My mom's fierce declaration echoed in the air, marking a pivotal moment of justice for us. "This should teach you a lesson about disrespecting my daughter and me. You're not too young to understand the difference between right and wrong, and it's time for you to face the consequences," my mom asserted, her tone firm but fair. "Yes, Mom, I understand," Michael replied, knowing that he had crossed a line and needed to accept the repercussions of his actions. Come on, Grace, don't you think this is all a bit too extreme? Justin tried to argue, seeking some leniency. Quite the opposite. This is barely scratching the surface of what's deserved, my mom countered, her resolve unwavering. Emma, how's our live stream doing? She inquired, adding a modern twist to ensuring that justice was seen to be done. We've got over 5,000 viewers tuning in. This is making waves, I informed her, amazed at the digital audience we had attracted. And just to make things perfectly clear, my mom turned towards Justin, her voice steady and clear. I want a divorce. Yes, you heard it right, folks, she announced, making sure the live stream caught every word. The fallout from the live stream was monumental. The drama unfolded in real time for over 5,000 witnesses, and the story quickly spread to local newspapers and tabloids. Being at the center of this whirlwind was surreal, witnessing the swift downfall of Justin, my soon-to-be ex-stepfather, and the complicit Michael. The satisfaction of seeing justice served was palpable. Justin's world unraveled as he lost his job, friends, and even the support of some family members who chose to distance themselves. Facing serious charges, Justin's future hung in the balance, with the potential of spending up to 20 to 22 years behind bars if the court found him guilty. Meanwhile, Martha, his partner in crime, was also discovered by the police after attempting to lay low during the scandal. She too faced similar charges, her future uncertain. Through the turmoil, my mom and I found strength in each other. Our bond deepened as we navigated through the chaos, coming out stronger on the other side. Weekends were now our time to unwind on the patio, drinks in hand, reflecting on the absurdity and malevolence of Justin's actions. It was a period of healing and reaffirmation for us both. Good riddance, we toasted, a shared sentiment of relief and closure. Good riddance indeed. My name is Emma, and at 45 years old, I find myself drawn into the captivating world of French soap operas. Thanks to the plethora of streaming services available, each new drama hooks me deeper, weaving intricate stories filled with intense emotions. However, amidst the fictional dramas on screen, a real-life saga unfolded in my own life not too long ago. It was nearly 5 years back when I shared a home with my husband, who happened to be older than me. Despite our lack of children, I cherished the idea of spending quality time together. Yet an unexpected twist emerged one day when my longtime friend, Julia, whom I've known since childhood, and who even attended our wedding, called to reveal her recent divorce. The news caught me off guard, and as I returned home intending to share the revelation with my husband, he surprised me by already knowing about Julia's marital troubles. Bewildered, I questioned how he had learned about it, as I hadn't mentioned it yet. His response left me uneasy, as if he had discerned something amiss in our relationship. As the conversation unfolded, he made plans to accompany us for drinks, turning what was meant to be a girls' night out into an uncomfortable trio. Confusion and uncertainty clouded my mind as I attempted to navigate the situation, unsure of my husband's motives and feeling a sense of disconnection. I found myself puzzled by my husband's sudden insistence on joining our girls' night out. It seemed unusual, and I couldn't quite fathom his motivations. However, at his behest, I reached out to Julia to see how she felt about the idea. Surprisingly, she seemed open to the idea of us all hanging out together, which caught me off guard. I had anticipated her to prefer a night without my husband's presence. As the evening unfolded, the three of us, my husband, Julia, and I, gathered for what turned out to be an unexpectedly enjoyable outing. Despite my initial reservations, the atmosphere was light, with Julia sharing her grievances about her recent divorce, which we turned into light-hearted banter to lift her spirits. However, amidst the laughter and camaraderie, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of discomfort. A brief trip to the restroom heightened my unease as I returned to witness what seemed like an intimate exchange between Julia and my husband. Their prolonged eye contact and seemingly private conversation left me feeling unsettled, especially considering they hadn't seen each other since our wedding. Despite my attempts to brush off my concerns, the incident continued to nag at me throughout the evening. As the night drew to a close and Julia grew increasingly inebriated, my husband's casual offer to take her home alone caught me off guard. His nonchalant demeanor and lack of consideration for my feelings left me feeling marginalized, especially considering our relationship. Although I voiced my concerns, my husband's insistence on escorting Julia home alone further fueled my doubts. His rationale seems flimsy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Despite my protests, he remained adamant, leaving me to contemplate the implications of their seemingly close bond and his disregard for our relationship. In the end, as they left together, I couldn't help but wonder about the nature of their relationship and whether I had been too quick to dismiss my suspicions. The night had taken an unexpected turn, leaving me with a whirlwind of emotions and unanswered questions about the dynamics between my husband and my longtime friend. Let me recount the tumultuous events that unfolded after that fateful night. Julia, now living alone in her apartment, added another layer of complexity to the situation. The discomfort I felt during our outing transformed into disbelief as I contemplated the possibility of her sharing details with my husband while I was briefly absent. Despite my initial hesitation, I made the decision to leave them together and head home alone. The conflicting emotions turned within me as I grappled with the implications of their seemingly close bond. However, as I stepped into the familiarity of my husband's study room upon my return, I found myself drawn to the shelves, wondering if they held any clues to the truth. My eyes fell upon a forgotten photo album, its presence unfamiliar amidst the familiar surroundings. With a sense of foreboding, I flipped through its pages, revealing a trove of photographs capturing moments of happiness between my husband and Julia. Each image spoke volumes, hinting at a relationship that had been clandestinely blossoming for over a decade, unbeknownst to me. The weight of this revelation hit me like a ton of bricks, exacerbating the effects of the alcohol coursing through my veins. Nausea threatened to overwhelm me as I grappled with the betrayal unfolding before my eyes. In my intoxicated state, I stumbled towards the bathroom, only to be intercepted by my returning husband. His obliviousness to my distress grated on my already frayed nerves, prompting a visceral reaction as I recoiled from his touch. The facade of normalcy shattered as I struggled to come to terms with the depth of his deceit. With each passing moment, the anger simmered within me, fueled by a sense of betrayal and disbelief. His attempts at reconciliation only served to further infuriate me as I recoiled from his gestures of concern. The urge to drown my sorrows in alcohol and oblivion intensified, a desperate attempt to escape the pain of betrayal. Yet, amidst the chaos, a steely resolve took hold as I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. As we faced each other in the living room, the air crackled with tension, punctuated by the weight of unspoken truths. His casual demeanor belied the gravity of the situation, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. With a sense of resignation, I posed the question that hung heavy in the air, demanding answers to the painful truth revealed by the damning photographs. The confrontation with my husband was a moment of reckoning, fueled by a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a desperate need for answers. As I presented the album I had stumbled upon in his sanctuary, his pale complexion betrayed his inner turmoil, setting the stage for a series of questions that demanded truth and accountability. With each query, I peeled back the layers of deception, laying bare the extent of his infidelity and the shattered remnants of our marriage. The first question hung heavy in the air, a simple yet damning inquiry that left no room for evasion. Yet his silence spoke volumes, a tacit acknowledgement of his guilt that only served to stoke the flames of my fury. As I pressed for a response, his words stumbled forth like shards of broken glass, punctuating the tense silence with hollow apologies and feeble excuses. His admission of betrayal was met with cold indifference as I grappled with the reality of our shattered trust and the irreparable damage inflicted upon our relationship. But it was his declaration of allegiance to another that truly shattered what remained of our bond. The revelation of his love for Julia, delivered with the fervor of a newfound zealot, struck me like a dagger to the heart. His words, laden with the weight of destiny and spiritual alignment, rang hollow in the face of his betrayal. In that moment of clarity, I realized the futility of salvaging what was left of our marriage. The bonds that once tethered us together had been severed beyond repair, replaced by a chasm of betrayal and disillusionment. His desire for divorce, fueled by his newfound connection to Julia, was met with a resigned acceptance tinged with a bitterness that lingered like a bitter aftertaste. As we parted ways, the echoes of our failed marriage reverberated in the empty space between us, a testament to the fragility of trust and the inexorable march of fate. In the end, all that remained was the hollow shell of what once was, a testament to the fleeting nature of love and the harsh realities of human frailty. In response to my husband's absurd request for a divorce, I found myself retorting with an equally absurd attitude. As he continued to badger me with his demands, I chose silence as my shield, retreating into the sanctuary of the shower to escape his tirade. His shouts echoed through the walls, a stark reminder of the crumbling facade of our once happy marriage. With each passing moment, the rift between us widened, fueled by resentment and unspoken grievances. His insistence on divorce only served to strengthen my resolve as I defiantly asserted my independence and reclaimed my sense of self-worth. In my eyes, he had become nothing more than a nuisance, a mere speck of dust in the vast expanse of my existence. The next day dawned with an air of liberation as I embraced the newfound freedom that lay before me. With my husband gone for the day, I reveled in the solitude of my own company, relishing the peace and quiet that had long eluded me. As he returned home that evening, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls, I remained unmoved, refusing to acknowledge his presence. His frantic search for his missing shoes served as a stark reminder of the irreparable rift that had formed between us. With each passing moment, the divide between us grew wider until it seemed insurmountable. Yet I remained resolute in my decision to forge ahead alone, undeterred by his futile attempts at reconciliation. As he pleaded for my attention, I remained aloof, lost in my own world of luxurious indulgence. The clatter of his footsteps echoed through the silence, a stark reminder of the chasm that had formed between us. His confusion and frustration only served to reinforce my resolve as I forged ahead with unwavering determination. In the end, as he followed me with a mixture of confusion and desperation, I remained steadfast in my resolve to reclaim my independence. With each passing moment, the realization dawned upon me that I was no longer beholden to him or the confines of our fractured marriage. In the silence of the evening, I found solace in the knowledge that I was finally free to chart my own course, unencumbered by the weight of his expectations. Amidst the turmoil of our fractured relationship, the mundane tasks of daily life became battlegrounds for our ongoing conflicts. As my husband demanded food, I responded with a curt dismissal, reminding him once more of my solitary existence. It was a small act of defiance, a silent declaration of my newfound independence. With each passing day, I found solace in the small victories, relishing the opportunity to reclaim my autonomy in the face of his relentless demands. Even the simple act of disposing of his toothbrush became a symbolic gesture, a subtle reminder of my newfound liberation. Yet as the morning light filtered through the curtains, I found myself face to face with the aftermath of our tumultuous night. My husband, disheveled and contrite, bore the weight of his transgressions like a heavy burden. His apology, a desperate plea for forgiveness, his words hung in the air laden with the weight of his remorse and the promise of redemption. But as he knelt before me, his plea for a fresh start fell on deaf ears. The scars of his betrayal ran too deep, leaving me numb to his hollow gestures of contrition. In that moment of vulnerability, I stood my ground, refusing to be swayed by his empty promises. His shock at my rejection mirrored my own disbelief at his audacity. As I recoiled from the notion of reconciliation with a man who had betrayed my trust so callously, as he pleaded for a second chance, I remained resolute, unwilling to entertain the possibility of a future tainted by his infidelity. My refusal to capitulate to his demands was met with confusion and despair as he struggled to comprehend the gravity of his actions. In the end, as he grappled with the consequences of his betrayal, I found a glimmer of satisfaction in his anguish. For too long, I had allowed myself to be manipulated by his empty promises. But now I stood firm in my resolve to reclaim my dignity and self-worth. As the echoes of our confrontation faded into the silence, I knew that I had made the right choice. For in refusing to accept anything less than the respect and loyalty I deserved, I reclaimed my power. I had reclaimed my power and emerged stronger than ever before in the wake of the revelation of my husband's betrayal and the devastating truth of Julia's involvement in our marital downfall. I found myself at a crossroads, grappling with a tumultuous mix of emotions, ranging from anger and betrayal to a deep-seated determination to seek justice and reclaim my sense of self-worth. It was a watershed moment that demanded action, and I was ready to confront the turmoil head-on, no matter the cost. As the weight of their deceit settled upon me like a heavy cloak, I resolved to take decisive action with a clarity of purpose fueled by years of pent-up frustration and indignation. I made it unequivocally clear to both my husband and Julia that there would be repercussions for their actions. No longer would I passively endure the pain and suffering inflicted upon me by their clandestine affair. It was time to assert my autonomy, to reclaim agency over my own life, and to hold them accountable for the havoc they had wrought upon my once happy existence. With a steely resolve, I laid out my intentions to seek retribution, to demand compensation for the irreparable damage they had inflicted upon me. Alimony was merely the tip of the iceberg. I vowed to pursue every avenue available to me to ensure that they both paid a steep price for their betrayal. It was a matter of principle, a refusal to allow their deceit to go unpunished, and I was prepared to pursue justice with unwavering determination. Dragging my husband to the threshold of our home, I cast him out into the cold, unforgiving world, severing the ties that had bound us together in matrimony. It was a visceral act of liberation, a symbolic gesture that marked the end of our toxic union and heralded a new chapter in my life, one defined by resilience and self-reliance. And as the truth of Julia's treachery came to light, I felt a surge of vindication wash over me. No longer would I be shackled by the chains of their deception. No longer would I allow myself to be defined by their betrayal. Instead, I emerged from the wreckage of my broken marriage stronger and more empowered than ever before, ready to embrace the challenges that lay ahead with a newfound sense of courage and determination. In the end, their actions served as a catalyst for my transformation, propelling me forward on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Amidst the ruins of my shattered dreams, I found the strength to rebuild my life on my own terms, forging a path towards a brighter and more fulfilling future, one free from the shadows of their deceit and manipulation. It was a bitter pill to swallow, hearing the sordid tale of betrayal and deception unfold before my eyes. But as I listened to the repercussions of their actions, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. After all, it was the consequences they deserved for their betrayal, for tearing apart the fabric of trust that once bound us together. Now 5 long years have passed since that tumultuous chapter in my life. In the midst of paying alimony, my ex-husband found himself forced into retirement, his golden years overshadowed by the financial burden of our divorce settlement. And as for Julia, she too found herself ensnared in the web of her own making, her prospects for remarriage dwindling with each passing day. It seems that karma had caught up with them both, exacting its toll for the pain and suffering they had caused. While my ex-husband struggles to make ends meet and Julia grapples with the harsh realities of her financial situation, I have chosen a different path. Though I have been compensated handsomely for the betrayal I endured, I have eschewed extravagance in favor of a simpler, more modest existence. For in life, one never knows what twists and turns may lie ahead. And so I have chosen to live each day with purpose and intention, focusing on the things that truly matter. Amidst the chaos of life's uncertainties, I have found solace in the simple pleasures, such as indulging in my favorite pastime of watching French soap operas. Recently, I even found a kindred spirit at work who shares my passion, and we have begun to dream of adventures in France together. But as we plan for the future, I am reminded of the importance of living in the present, of cherishing each moment as it comes. No longer do I concern myself with the compatibility of our soul vibrations or the intricacies of fate. Instead, I strive for peace, for health, and above all, for happiness. Today, my goal is simple: to live a life filled with joy and contentment, to embrace each day with gratitude and optimism. For in the end, it is not the hardships we endure or the betrayals we suffer that define us, but rather the strength and resilience with which we face them. And as I look towards the future, I do so with hope in my heart and a renewed sense of purpose.